This week I've got two movies. I've got Mission Impossible Fallout and Generation Wealth. And let's start with Mission Impossible Fallout. Obviously, it's the bigger movie of the two. Tom Cruise is back as Ethan Hunt. And I find that these are the most palatable roles I can watch Tom Cruise in these days. Obviously, Tom Cruise just plays Tom Cruise now. Like, I feel like every movie he's in, he's just an iteration of Tom Cruise. And the Ethan Hunt Mission Impossible movies are the most true to him, and therefore the least awkward to watch him in. So he's back. Simon Pegg is back as Benji. Ving Rhames is back as Luther. You know, the team's back together. And I don't think you need to know a ton about previous ones. Okay, there's actually little bits and pieces you probably should know from previous ones, and I think I legitimately had forgotten, but it's pretty clear, like, okay, here's a bad guy, okay, here's a good guy, okay, here's somebody who might be a bad or a good guy. So if you aren't familiar with the Mission Impossible franchise, I think it's totally fine to just start with this one. We see Tom Cruise. He's sent on a mission. Should he choose to accept it? Of course, he accepts it. We see the bad guy from, I believe, the last movie, Solomon Lane, who's played by Sean Harris, come back. We actually also see the return of a lot of other characters. We get Michelle Monaghan is back as Julia, Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt's ex-wife. And we get Rebecca Ferguson back as Ilsa Faust, who is another secret agent. So that's really, I think, the core of what you need to know going into this one. I like that Rebecca Ferguson is in this. I think she's capable. She doesn't take crap from, Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt's character. She's a super spy as well. So it's kind of nice having a little bit of a balance. I could do without some of the every woman in this world falls in love with Tom Cruise's character bits. I think it's a little bit narcissistic on his part, or the whole thing. I love also that Tom Cruise is a producer, and like when the first credits roll, it's like a Tom Cruise production. We get it, dude. We get it. Alec Baldwin is back as, one of the heads of the government. And then Angela Bassett. I love Angela Bassett's contribution to this. So she plays the head of the CIA now. Tiniest of spoilers, Alec Baldwin is now the head of the IMF, which is the secret organization. And they have to deal with extracting Solomon Lane. And so Angela Bassett, the CIA head, sends Henry Cavill as like her representative on the team. And I don't know what's worse or more fake, Henry Cavill's mustache or his accent. He's fine at it, whatever. Like, I'm starting to question whether or not Henry Cavill's actually a good actor. I haven't seen him in anything incredibly impressive so far. So the movie is far too long. It's 2.5 hours almost. I think they could have definitely trimmed a lot. The action sequences are cool. I actually saw it in a Dolby theater, which means like the super crazy surround sound. That was very cool to experience, but there were some sequences that I just felt like went on too long, and like the movie didn't sort of move along until maybe like the last third, and I feel like it would have been much more perilous and like exciting if it had been tightened up a bit, and I think it was just a little bit indulgent on their part. But again, that's what you're going to see, so that's what they give you in spades. Overall, I had a good time. I was pretty tired when I saw it, so I almost fell asleep a couple times. I don't think that's the movie's fault. I think that's just exhaustion on my part. But the fact that I was almost able to fall asleep during this very loud boom, action movie, maybe it's a little bit the movie's fault. But yeah, I think you'll have a good time at it. You know what you're getting into. You know what's happening. You're going to get action. You're going to get action. You're going to get Tom Cruise. So I'm going to give it 3.8 out of 5. And the other film I have this week is called Generation Wealth, and is from Lauren Greenfield, who did Queen of Versailles, which I thought was one of the most interesting documentaries I'd seen in a long time. That was about the couple, Jackie Siegel, who wanted to build they were building like basically a replica of Versailles in Florida, but the housing market crashed, and it was fascinating to look at what happened during this culture of opulence. And so she continues to explore that in this, but I feel like she made Generation Wealth a little too centric around her and her family, and I think that if she'd positioned it more as that going into it, it would have been a cleaner movie. Like she definitely like inserts herself into the film much more, and it's more about how her kind of career to this point has led to this film. But there are some things that kind of honestly feel shoehorned in. It's very interesting at points. You see a lot of like very famous people in it who she captured when they were young. Like it was before they were famous, and she just happened to peg like, hey, this person is wealthy as a youth, and now they're wealthy now. But it's interesting, trying to work her previous work in. She did a film about eating disorders called Thin, and like it works that in, and kids and money, which makes more sense for this. You know, obviously, clearly she's had an fascination with the wealthy, and I don't think she's particularly wealthy herself, but I think it feels like no one is the protagonist of this film, and she wants to make herself the protagonist, but doesn't commit to making herself the protagonist. She's kind of like a disembodied voiceover sometimes. It's also like, are there sympathetic characters in this film, or a documentary? Are there sympathetic characters in this documentary? And in Generation Wealth, I feel like her kids might be the only people who fulfill that kind of metric, and that's a little uncomfortable because it's like, okay, well, where's your objectivity? You know, but overall, like, there's enough interesting parts to it that I think it's worth a watch. If you haven't seen any of her work before, I would watch Queen of Versailles over this. But I think, you know, if you found Queen of Versailles interesting, if you find kind of the obsession with wealth in Western and now Eastern countries, like, that's really what I wanted this to go with. I thought she was going to explore the crazy boom of opulence in like the Middle East and Asia, and how they're trying to mirror the Western perception of like, where, you know, build it bigger, build it better, and they have the money to do it now. Like, they're going through what we went through a couple of years ago, but she only like scratches the surface of that. Either way, I think it's interesting. You know, it's worth a watch if you have the time. I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5.